They can appear, and so nothing human can make a 90-degree turn at 3,000 miles an hour. And that's my people laugh at me generally, but I'm not going to be, I don't care.
Charles Duke is one of the last living men to have walked on another world. For most of his life, the public knew him as a smiling astronaut, a decorated Air Force officer, a man who left footprints in lunar dust. But behind closed doors, when the cameras were gone and the applause had faded, there were conversations that never made it into NASA transcripts. When he returned from the moon in 1972, there was one person who heard the unfiltered version first: his wife. And now, after more than 50 years, she is speaking about what he told her. Charles Duke was not just another astronaut. Before he ever touched the moon, he had already helped make history. During Apollo 11, he served as the voice in mission control, guiding Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin as they prepared to land. When Armstrong said, "The Eagle has landed," it was Duke who responded from Earth. He knew what the moon looked like through flickering black and white monitors. He knew the numbers, the procedures, the risks, but he did not yet know the feeling. 3 years later, aboard Apollo 16, Duke finally stepped into that silence himself, and what he experienced did not match the pictures. He told his wife the first thing that struck him was the sky. It was not just black, it was total. A darkness so complete it felt physical, like standing inside a void with no depth. There were no clouds, no blue haze, no soft gradients of color. The sun blazed against the surface without mercy, and the shadows it cast were absolute. On Earth, light scatters. On the moon, it does not. Every rock cast a razor-sharp outline. Every crater looked like it had been cut with a blade. Step into shadow, and you nearly vanished. He said it was disorienting, beautiful, but hostile. And then there was the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of a forest, not the calm of a winter night, but a silence so complete it felt loud. No wind, no insects, no distant hum of civilization, just the steady rhythm of his breathing inside the suit and the faint mechanical whisper of life support systems keeping him alive. He told her it made him feel small in a way he had never felt before. Most people imagine astronauts gazing constantly at Earth, that glowing blue marble suspended in black space. But Duke explained something that rarely gets mentioned. During much of Apollo 16, Earth was positioned high overhead. Because of the stiffness of the spacesuit and the limited mobility of the helmet, he could barely tilt his head back far enough to see it. For long stretches, he stood on the moon without seeing home. He said that absence was heavier than he expected. Apollo 16 was not just symbolic. It was one of the most scientifically ambitious missions NASA ever launched. Duke and Commander John Young spent more than 70 hours on the lunar surface. They drove the lunar rover across rugged highlands, climbed slopes, crossed fields of ancient debris, and collected over 200 pounds of rock samples. They deployed experiments, including the first ultraviolet telescope ever operated from another world. They gathered data that scientists still analyze today. But in private, Duke spoke less about equipment and more about sensation. He described the lunar dust to his wife in detail. It was not soft like beach sand. It was jagged, abrasive, almost metallic. It clung to everything: suits, gloves, tools. When they returned to the lunar module, the dust carried a strange smell once repressurized, something like burnt gunpowder. It was alien. He told her about the moment he tried to jump high in 1/6 gravity, just to feel what it was like. He soared higher than any human could on Earth and then fell backward onto his life support backpack. For a split second, he realized how fragile everything was. If that pack had cracked, there would have been no rescue, no second chances. The moon did not forgive mistakes. She remembers him saying that walking there was not graceful. It was awkward, slow, mechanical. The suit was bulky and stiff. Peripheral vision was almost non-existent. To look to the side, he had to turn his entire body. To kneel down and pick up a rock required planning. It was work, hard work. The moon was not a playground. It was a proving ground. Years passed. The Apollo era ended. Public attention drifted elsewhere. New generations grew up with different milestones. But Duke carried those memories quietly. And then, something changed. In recent years, he has encountered people who insist the moon landings were fake, that it was filmed on a stage, that it never happened. She says that hurts him more than people realize. He does not respond with anger, he responds with detail. He talks about the way sunlight reflected off the regolith, the way the rover kicked up dust that fell in perfect arcs because there was no air resistance, the weight of the tools, the feel of the ladder beneath his boots as he descended onto another world. He reminds people that hundreds of pounds of lunar samples sit in laboratories around the world, that independent scientists across decades have tested them. You cannot fake geology at that scale. Only 4 of the 12 men who walked on the moon are still alive. Duke understands that reality deeply. Time is relentless. His wife says that recently there has been a quiet urgency in his voice when he speaks about those days. Not fear, not regret, but responsibility. He knows that soon there will be no living witness left to describe what lunar dust feels like under human boots. And that is why he told her everything. Not just the official version, the emotional version. He describes standing on the highlands and looking across a landscape untouched for billions of years. No erosion, no weather, no life. Just ancient scars from impacts long before Earth had oceans. He said it felt like standing at the beginning of time. He told her that when he finally did catch a glimpse of Earth, small and fragile in the distance, something shifted inside him. Borders disappeared. Politics seemed temporary. From that vantage point, humanity looked united, whether it knew it or not. He could hide the entire planet behind his thumb. That perspective never left him. She says the moon changed him in ways the public could not see. It softened some edges, sharpened others. It made him protective of truth, not just about Apollo, but about what humanity is capable of when it decides to attempt the impossible. He watches the new Artemis missions with anticipation. To him, they are not publicity events. They are a continuation of a story paused in 1972. He believes the moon is not a trophy, but a training ground, the place where humanity must learn to live and build before reaching for Mars. But he also knows something else. The footprints he left in lunar dust are still there. Because the moon has no atmosphere, no wind, no rain, those prints remain almost exactly as he left them more than 50 years ago. They may endure for millions of years, longer than any monument ever built on Earth. Yet memory is more fragile than dust. That is why his wife is speaking now. Because the story is not just about science, it is about perspective. It is about what it means for a human being to step off their home planet and realize how thin the line is between survival and silence. She says when he talks about the moon, his voice changes slightly. There is awe still there, but also gravity, a recognition that he was part of something that may not happen again in quite the same way. He does not romanticize it. He remembers the danger, the towering Saturn V rocket shaking beneath him at launch, the knowledge that a single malfunction could mean the end. He remembers trusting thousands of engineers he would never meet face to face. And he remembers standing in a place where humans do not belong and surviving. Now, at 89 years old, he understands that history is shifting from lived experience to recorded archive. Soon, children will learn about Apollo the way previous generations learned about sailing ships and steam engines, as stories. But for him, it was real. For her, it was personal. She says that when he told her what he saw on the moon, it was not about spectacle, it was about perspective. It was about understanding how fragile our world is and how rare. The moon did not just show him space, it showed him Earth. And that, she believes, is the part people need to remember most. The mission ended in 1972, but its meaning did not. Now the question is not whether Apollo mattered. The question is whether we will carry that same courage forward. Should humanity return to the moon before going to Mars? Do stories like this still matter in an age of skepticism? Let us know what you think.